reviewed with the youth, and so this will be a review for the youth, but it's so good. It kind of sums up what we did in February. So today we are speaking. Okay, so this is what it says. John chapter 18, verse 1. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the brook Cridon, where there was a garden which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers, and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, "Who do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Man, did you guys just hear that? Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna give us a little demonstration. This morning I wanted the elders to do this, but I was like, oh, maybe I'll save it for us. So I want all the youth. I want you guys to come up, stand up, youth, and come to the front stage for me. Come on, guys. And then I want you guys to face me. Yeah. And then for our just among the front stage. Yeah. This is kind of like a concert. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, all right. Okay, yeah. And then you guys can stand some in the back. But face me, though. Okay, face me. All right. And then everybody else, if you guys want to, you guys can stand up and maybe find a place where it's kind of open for you to fall down. All right. So I want us to kind of get a glimpse of what happened in this chapter. So I want to invite all you guys, everybody else, if you guys want to participate, stand up. And then stand next to the side of your chair, or if you guys want to, you guys could just stand up. Okay, so what? Oh. I don't really see it, but I want us to kind of just picture a glance of what happened. So during that time, there was a group of soldiers that came, but according to the Greek word, which is spatros, it's actually referring to a tenth of a legion. We're talking about thousands and thousands, right? Soldiers of a legion. So we're talking about 300 to 600 people, soldiers. Some soldiers from the temple courts, they were all there planning to arrest Jesus. So you have to keep in mind how many people were following Jesus. Well, we do know that Jesus fed 5,000 men, right? Not even including women and children. So there was a big crowd following Jesus. So they had to make sure that there was enough soldiers to make sure that they could arrest Jesus. So this whole group of soldiers were coming to arrest Jesus. And the moment they approached Jesus, Jesus says to them, "Who are you looking for?" And then they said, "Oh, we're looking for Jesus." And then Jesus says, "I am he." And then they all fell to the ground. Now, when I say "I am he," I want you guys to just fall to the ground, but fall carefully. Okay, no injuries here, all right? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. I am he. Yeah. Okay, all right. All right, you guys can go sit down. All right. All right. Okay, so I passed some slips around. If you guys don't have it, maybe you guys can take a picture of it. It's pretty easy to follow. I kind of want us to kind of follow through and remember some key concepts that we're going to learn today. So I actually went through a term with the youth about a phrase or a term that regards to when the word became flesh, right? And that's spoken by John 2 and John chapter 1. Now, when Jesus said, I am, that was so powerful that all those soldiers, we're talking about hundreds of soldiers, okay, and the Pharisees, even Judas, okay, they all fell to the ground. Now, this is, when I told you guys to kind of participate, I want you guys to get a feel, but really, matter of fact, before Abraham was, I am. And that's when they really knew they wanted to kill Jesus. Because what was Jesus trying to say? Jesus was trying to say that he was God, okay? So that was the statement of I am. And so when Jesus said to those that was going to arrest Jesus, Jesus said, I am he. That was a statement of his power, of his miracle that he has founded from the beginning, from Genesis, from the moment of the fall. God promised that, and he came into fruition in John chapter 18. So that was so powerful that even nowadays, when a lot of pastors, they go through deliverance, demonic spirits, they don't want to confess this because this is a statement of God's power, of God becoming human. So in John chapter 1, John described that it was the Word that became flesh, right? But the exegesis of that, the translation is that it is God becoming human. And so that's something that's so amazing that it kind of sums up everything that what John was talking about in John chapter 1. And so when you see that this miracle, this power that has happened, and those soldiers fell to the ground, they were stunned. So if you continue reading, after they kind of, woken up and became conscious, and then Jesus said again, like, so who are you looking for? And then they didn't do anything, all right? And what's so awkward was that at that moment, like, they were just all stunned, like, oh, like, I can't believe what happened to us. Like, in the Old Testament, during the time of Elijah, soldiers were trying to come get him too, but he was a man of God, and he called fire come from the sky. And so these soldiers, they were like frightened of Jesus. And so what happened was that Jesus said this in order so that his disciples won't be killed that night. Because there was a possibility that they might have killed everybody and just taken Jesus. And so there was like a twofold thing that has happened that night was the incarnation, and two, to reveal his power and to save his disciples that night. And so that's pretty awesome how that unfolded. Now, so the second part I want to talk about is when Jesus came before the council. And this council was the highest council of the Jews. And it's a pretty big council consisting of priests and Pharisees and some Jews. But for us that don't know what this council is called, can we get the next slide? It's called the Sanhedrin. Good. All right, so write that down. Sanhedrin, very good. All right, so this was the council that trialed Jesus. So if we continue reading on, I'm going to skip some verses, but I'm going to go straight to the point where Jesus came to talk to Pilate, okay? And so this council, they were asking questions about Jesus, and it was already during this time that they were already torturing Jesus too, okay? So as we continue on, we're going to learn about some things, some dialogues between Jesus and Pilate. So this is in verse 28. Oh, I'm sorry, it's verse 33. So this is what it says. It says, so Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not of this world." Then Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king? For this reason I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who hears the truth, listen to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is the truth?" And then the dialogue stops. Okay, that's the interesting part. Why did not Jesus answer what the truth was? Okay, and this is so awesome, because this is basically what John was talking about. So Jesus said that, okay, you said that I'm a king. It is because of that reason. That's why I was born into this world. Okay, and if you recall, born into this world, we see that in John chapter 3, Jesus was talking to Nicodemus, right, about coming to this world. So what did John say in John chapter 3? So Jesus said to Nicodemus, you guys know all this verse very well. It's in John chapter 3, verse 16. Okay, it's a really popular verse, right? "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life." Right? So that's what it says. And so that relating to John chapter 18 is regarding the reason why God has sent Jesus down. Now, sometimes when we listen to what the truth is, it's so hard for us to grasp what is the truth, right? So I'm gonna spill some beans about some commandments, maybe some of the greatest commandments ever. So we read John chapter 3, verse 16, which is a very popular verse. A lot of theologians love this verse because it kind of sums up the reason why Jesus came down. But in the commandments, the greatest commandment is to love your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, right? And to love your neighbors as you love yourself. So let's just look at these three verses, right? It talks about how God so loved the world, right? And then it talks about how we're supposed to do what with God? With all our hearts, all our minds, all our strength. What are we supposed to do? The key word is love. Do you see that? And so the reason why God sent Jesus, because he so loved us. That's why he sent his son Jesus, right? In the commandment, the greatest commandment, what are we supposed to do with all our hearts, our minds, soul, and strength? We're supposed to love God with all our hearts, our soul, our mind, our strength. And what are we supposed to do with our neighbors? We're supposed to love them as we love ourselves, right? And so the word love keeps occurring over and over and over again. But what's so amazing is that, so this past month, we talked about the love chapter, and we've spoken about 1 John chapter 4. And we said that, I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but we said that God is love, right? And if you flip that, you can also say that love is God, right? Okay, so this is 1 John chapter 4. Now, what's so amazing about this concept is that God is love, right? And there was a caller who called in on K-Love, because the question is, what is love, right? And so many people are answering that, like, hey, love is forgiveness, love is sacrifice, it's not self-seeking. And then there was this kid, he answered the call. He said, hey, I just had a question, it just came to my mind. And then we're just talking about a little kid, maybe like a 7 or 8-year-old. And then this kid's like, I don't know scripture so much, but it just came to my mind, like, what is love? God. And then the host started crying because it summed up what love was, right? And what's so amazing is that, let me continue to write this on the board. So what's so amazing is that, here, I think this is better. What's so amazing is that John, he talked about in John chapter 1 that in the beginning was the Word, right? And the Word was with God and the Word was God, okay? Now, because we know that God is love and love is God, right? So let's talk about the Word, okay? So let's write the Word down. Okay, so John said that in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was what? The Word was God. Okay? And this Word is supposed to be like a light that shines in the darkness, like our sun into our solar system, right? A light that shines into this darkness. And this light, okay, came in the form of a person, right? And this Word became flesh, right? And we know that as Jesus, right? So in John chapter 18, what happened was that when Jesus talked about his incarnation, about him becoming human, he came to testify about this light, right? And so I've spoken to our youth that there is something that can exist before creation, something that has existed before you and me were born. And I had the privilege to ask Chu to come and give a testimony about her son, Psalms, that before he was born, she already loved him. She already had this yearning to want him. And this is something that I experienced for myself too. And I want you guys to know that before you were born, that there has existed something before you were born that relates you to God. And what is that? So earlier we said that the Word was God, right? And it was in the beginning. And then remember I wrote the equation that God is love and love is God? Well, if the Word was God and God was in the beginning, that means that in the beginning was love. Do you guys get it? And so in John chapter 17, when it ends, what did Jesus say? Jesus was praying to his disciples and said, Father, I pray that the love that you have for me before the creation of the world, that this love that we have between you and me, that they may have between them and me as well. So us, the believers of Jesus, for us to have that love, that same love, like the love that Jesus had with his son before the creation of the world. And so this love existed before we were even created, before the creation of this universe. And what's so amazing about that is that it can relate to parents too. So let me ask you guys this. Did you first love your children, or did your children first love you? And the answer is that as parents, we first love our children first, right? Because we're conscious first before they were even born. And so that's why in scriptures it said, it's not that you love God, it's because God loved you first. Isn't that amazing? Because, it's because love was in the beginning. That's what's so amazing about it. And so, thank you. So the answer is that love was in the beginning, right? And it's so important for us to understand this concept because if we understand that this world was created out of love, everything changes. Our whole point of view changes. And it changes the way we think, the way we feel, because love has a greater meaning, a greater purpose. And so what's so amazing is that there was this research that I read. It was about how to speak to your kids while your kids are still in the womb. And I read about it. I was like, whoa, so there's a possibility that a child could recognize the parent's voice or whoever is speaking to them before the children is born. And then afterwards, they can recognize that voice. And so with my last child, Annika, I decided to give it a try. I was like, dude, I'm going to put this to the test. And so Veruni was like 5 months, and I was talking in the middle of the night. She was so annoyed. I was talking to Annika. I had a high-pitched voice because they said that if you have a higher-pitched voice, they can hear better because they're in an environment where they're full of fluids. So I was like, hello! And I was just so annoying, and Rudy's like, stop it! And I was just going off for hours. And in the morning, I was talking to Annika, and at night, and it was just so awesome. And then what's so amazing was, I should have recorded this, but the moment she was born, like all children, she started crying, right? And then I was like, okay, so this is the time to prove it. And then I told Bruna to give me the Annika, and then I spoke, she stopped crying. And it was a moment where I realized that Annika recognized me, and she had a sense of peace. And it's so amazing how that can happen spiritually too. There are times in my life where I have been in dark places where you just feel like there's a lot of fear in you, right? And when you finally hear God's voice speaking to you, you get this sense of peace, that sense of calm, that you don't need to cry anymore, right? And so I felt so moved about how a child can really hear you in the womb. And when I actually put that to the test, Veruni was so amazed. She was out of words. And I didn't believe it either. But it really spoke to me because I just realized that how that can happen spiritually. And so I want to encourage us is that for us to understand that we were born out of love, right? We were born out of love. And in John chapter 19, this love is demonstrated not by words, but by action. Because love is just not a noun, but it's an action word. And I want to encourage you guys that in John chapter 19, it sums it up. That is the reason why when Pilate asked Jesus what is the truth, he stopped, because it has not been done yet. And so he didn't use words to describe it, but he used his actions in chapter 19. And so it's just so amazing how I want us to understand that concept. And now here's the harder part, okay? The harder part is about Peter, okay? In John chapter 18, it talks about Peter and about his devotion to Jesus. And what is so strange is that the Last Supper, right before Jesus got arrested, Jesus was explaining about what was gonna happen to him, and then Peter was like, Jesus, you don't have to worry. I'm gonna be there. Whatever happens to you is gonna happen to me. Don't worry about it. And then Jesus like, hey, Peter, before you know it, you're gonna deny me 3 times, right? And what happened? Well, if we read, we understand that in John chapter 18, Peter does deny Jesus 3 times, right? And what's something for us to learn about is this. So why is it that Peter denied Jesus? Well, if we see that when Jesus got arrested, they started torturing him, right? It had spoken that Jesus' face did not look like a man anymore. It was beaten to that extent. And when Peter was there seeing what happened to Jesus, Peter was afraid. And so when they kept on asking Peter, hey, we know who you are. Aren't you one of Jesus' disciples? What did Peter do? Peter denied Jesus, right? Because he was afraid of that torment. He was afraid to be punished like Jesus, right? And so he denied Jesus 3 times. And after that, he just wept and he ran away because he couldn't carry that burden anymore. And so what can we learn today? Okay? How can we apply that to our lives? Well, we can, actually. There's so many ways I can explain this, but I'll just speak about forgiveness, right? How many times in your life has your parents said things to hurt you? How many times has your wife said things that hurt you? Or your husband has said things to hurt you? Your friends had said things to hurt you or done things against you, and you don't want to forgive. That's when you're denying Jesus. Because if it's true that this love is inside you, especially for those that does communion, and you eat this communion to prove to God that God's supposed to be in you and you're in God, but when the time comes and you don't forgive, are you denying Jesus like Peter? And so that's something that I want us to understand and to know, that when we have Jesus in us, this love is supposed to be in us, right? And when the time comes that we need to forgive, this is when it shines its brightest, okay? And so a lot of times, man, it is hard to forgive. It is not easy, especially if you have a really good relationship and that relationship is broken. And when the time comes when someone comes to ask for forgiveness and they're tearing in front of you and they're asking for forgiveness, are you going to forgive? Because every time we eat the communion, what do we ask for? What do we thank God for? His forgiveness towards us, right? His love towards us. And if we are forgiven, we have to learn how to forgive other people. Now, this is just one topic of many, many other things, okay? But I want us to know that as we commit to Jesus, there will be times in our lives where we will have hardships, where we will be carrying the cross. But let us not deny Jesus, but let us confess that we are Jesus' disciples, that we know Jesus, that we know who he is. Because when that time comes, we want Jesus to say that he knows us, right? And so I encourage you guys to continue to have this love inside of you guys. And in John chapter 19, it sums it up, because love is the best description of love. It's not what you say, but it's what you do. Because for Veruni and I, like, a lot of times when people ask us about our marriage, and I'd be like, yeah, I wash the dishes all the time, and I'll be cleaning up all the time, and I do all the chores all the time, and there's not once that came to my mind that I thought, like, I'm doing this to prove that I love her. But it's because I love her that I do all that thing, right? All those things. And so the same way with our relationship with God, our works that we do for God can never give us that grace to go to heaven. We can never have that. It's only something that God has given to us, right? And so why do we do all these things for God? Why do we have to learn how to forgive, how to love others? Why do we have to learn how to love others as we love ourselves, right? It's because we don't do it to prove to Jesus that we love him, but it's because we love Jesus. That's why we do all these things, right? And so I want to encourage us is that when the time comes and when we have to endure suffering, let us not neglect who we stand for, right? Let us own that, yeah. Are we with Jesus? Yeah, we're with Jesus, all right. And take it. Take the hit, all right? Because Jesus already took it for you in John chapter 19. That's so amazing. And so I want to encourage us to understand that, because that's something that can change the way we think, the way we perform our activities in our daily lives. Because if we don't have this inside of us, how can we express this to other people? Because this is inside of us, right? We can learn how to be a creature, a creation that Jesus wants us to be. And so John chapter 18, it talked about the incarnation. It talked about the reason why Jesus was born. And it also explained about Peter. And Peter, he was scared, right? But eventually, what happened? As you continue reading, you will know. I don't want to spill the beans, but that's basically it, okay? There are more stories to it, but let Pastor Christian explain it in our next gathering. next week. But I encourage you guys to read John chapter 19 because love is demonstrated best not with words, but with action. Let me pray for us. Jesus, we thank you for today. We thank you for what you have given to us, especially the love that has come down from heaven. And we thank you for this opportunity to come just to have fellowship and to come and to understand more about your wisdom and what you have given us through John chapter 18. I pray that we will learn about this incarnation, how powerful it was, about how you became man, God, to come to give this love to us so that we can have this in our hearts and our minds, so we can share this love to other people. And I pray that when the time comes for us not to deny you, but to acknowledge you, God, that you are inside of us. And so I thank you for everybody here. I pray that you continue to be with us and continue to lead us closer to your kingdom. In your name, Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
That's a song for the message, and wonderful fulfilled stories as well. And so, I wasn't tearing up. It was just a lot of dust in the room here. But yeah, an amazing thing to know that because of love, that